Hi, my name is Javin and I'm a video editor. Today I'll be taking a look at a free version of a classic editing software. It's called Avid Free DV. So for those of you who don't know what Avid is, it's actually one of the most commonly used editing software used by the film and TV industry even to this day. But it is also one of the most high-end and expensive solutions, especially in the early days. So actually sometime in the mid-2000s, Avid did actually release a free version of the software so that aspiring editors can use it to learn the basics of the Avid workflow. And this was not a time-limited trial, this is a fully usable version of the software with some limitations. And that free version, Avid Free DV, is what we are going to be looking at today. So Avid Free DV is actually quite interesting to me because as a kid, I remember learning basic editing software like iMovie and Windows Movie Maker, and I found out that I actually really like editing. So I thought, hey, there's a free version of a professional editing software used in Hollywood. I'd really love to see what it looks like. So I downloaded Avid Free DV, and I found out that I completely did not know how to use it. But right now, after quite a number of years working as a professional editor, and being a fairly seasoned Avid editor now, I thought it'd be interesting to go back and revisit Avid Free DV and see how Avid was like compared to today. So before we start, I'd like to clarify that at the time of recording this video, if you want to try Avid for yourself, there's actually still a free version of the modern Avid Media Composer. It's called Media Composer First, which you can download from the Avid website. Avid Free DV is no longer officially supported and will not install properly on a modern operating system like Windows 10. Right now I'm running this software on an older Windows XP PC that I have lying around. But you should know that whatever you see in this video will still be useful because the Avid interface and workflow back then is still largely similar to what it is today. So I hope that this video will serve as a nice introduction to the Avid Media Composer interface for newcomers. I will also be referencing other editing software in this video, especially for those of you who are using Premiere or Final Cut or Resolve, so that you will understand how some similar features work a little bit differently in Avid. And for those veteran Avid editors out there who are watching this, I also hope that this will be a little trip down memory lane for you and see what has or hasn't changed in the last couple of decades. So let's get started. Alright, so we have just launched Avid Free DV, and right off the bat, it will show you this window where they'll show the whole the Avid family of Express DV option that you can buy. Obviously, we're going to skip that because they're not available to buy anymore. So here we are. We're going to change our. So this is the project window where we can create a project. So what we're going to do is we're going to select a place where we can create our project. So let's create a new project. We'll call it Avid Free DV Demo. So here you will notice that there's very little formats available, probably because it's old and because it's a free version. So for this project, we're gonna select NTSC. So click that, click OK, and there we are. This is the whole interface of Avid Free DV. Okay, I'm going to close this super bin. This will be relevant later. But this is your project window. So this is where all your bins will appear. So this will look very similar to what you see in other non-linear editing software, NLEs, like for example Premiere, Final Cut, or DaVinci Resolve. But here's the important difference. In Avid, a project is actually not a project file like Premiere. So it actually is a folder. So NTSC, so it's not this one. Demo. There we are. So this is the actual folder. So then that is our bin, the default bin that they create. So what are bins, you may ask? Some people may already be familiar with it, but I'll just explain it again. So bins are where you're going to organize your footage or how you're going to import them. So for Premiere or Resolve users, you may already understand the idea of bins and all that, but here on Avid there's one very important difference. So a bin is actually a physical file inside the project folder down here. So in this case, there you go, this is the bin. This will be very useful as I will explain later. Alright, so now that you got your project, now how you're gonna import your footage into the bin. So just it's very simple. File, right click on your bin, import. So here you can let's select this clip, and actually you just can select some different options for you to import. Avid will convert the format for you. You can choose which drive you're going to do. So all these video import options, I'll explain it to you later. So as well as here, you can also choose some advanced settings, your RGB levels, your color space that you're going to use, or your pixel aspect ratio, and so on. So you can be explored on your own when you have the full version of Avid. So it doesn't matter. So what's important is that you choose your file, you choose what format it is, and then you import. So this is going to take a while because this is kind of an old machine, which it will take a while to process this. So I'm going to cancel this. Then I'm going to just take a bin from another project and bring it into my current project. So let's just take these bins, copy it back into demo project. Boom, there we have 2 bins and it's updated. Alright, so we have our bins into our project. So let's open them. So maybe not the best one, but okay, so we got 2 different views of we have got quite a number of views of looking at your bin. So let's take a look at this. So the view that I like to call is called the script view, where you see your thumbnails and you can actually put your notes here. There's also the text view, which is just, as it says, pure text. You can just choose whatever options that you have. And there's a frame view, which is sort of a thumbnail view. But what is really more advanced from this and them say is Premiere is that you can actually drag them around and do all sorts of things that you want with it. Premiere, you can't really do that. So if you want to adjust everything back into it, so let me just see if you can consolidate. It's a bin view, sorry. View window, there you go. So if you want to just get everything organized again, you just click on this fast menu, or we call it hamburger menu, and yes, you just select fill window and you will arrange all your thumbnails nicely. So if you want to have, notice that the thumbnails are actually quite small. So in Avid, there's a shortcut key to actually make it bigger, and in Avid it's very important to know your shortcut keys. I might refer to some of them here, but I guess as you go along, you should actually start to go and learn the shortcut keys yourself so you can do things faster, and this is very important for an editor workflow. So if you want to increase the thumbnails for and the bins in any view, is you Control L, then Control K is smaller, or in Apple you click Command K or L. So this is how you make it bigger. This will work on the frame view, and there's a script view, it also works the same way. Command L, K is just make it smaller. So let's actually open up one of these clips. So this is the composer window. So for those of you who are not very familiar with editing software, usually there's actually 2 windows, 2 video panels. So the one on the left is called the source monitor. So this is where you're going to play back your raw footage, and you're going to select which parts of it you want to put into the timeline. So the one on the right is called the monitor, the record monitor. Sorry, yeah, it's a record monitor. So this is where your edited footage will appear. Okay, so before we show any actual editing, I need to just tell you some important things about how Avid manages their files, because Avid actually controls where your media files are located because of its own backend infrastructure. So if you have your own way of organizing your footage on your hard drive, like what you do with other editing software, it's not going to work with Avid. And this is especially important because if you're going to work with Avid in a professional environment, you need to understand how Avid organizes its files. So as you saw when you import your footage, you can choose where is that? So let's say we open up the import window. You can actually choose which drive or partition to put into. So this drive can be a local drive or it can be a network drive on a server, but you cannot designate actually which particular directory or folder it will go to. So for example, let's actually take a look at this file. Where is it actually located? So you right click on this clip, review file. So you will notice that actually is in this folder called OMFI media file, so it's right here. So on a modern Avid system, it will actually appear in this folder called Avid media files, which we're not going to cover that today, so we're just going to focus on this free DV version, but the principle is still the same. So the next thing, let's go back to the import window. So actually, file, you can also do file import. Make sure the bin is selected. So you can actually import. One actually interesting feature is to actually import your video and audio into separate drives. Okay, you might think this feature is weird today, but actually this feature is there because in the old days, hard drives are not fast enough. So we have to stream. We have to separate the audio and video so that the drives are able to handle the bandwidth. But today hard drives are fast enough, and even SSDs and all that. So so today we don't really need to separate audio and video drive. But it's good to know that the feature is still there. So you may have noticed earlier that I just took bins from another project and copied into my project without even closing a project, and it's fairly easy. So, and that's the beauty of how bins work in Avid. So this kind of workflow actually will facilitate multiple editors working on the same project on a central server, which is useful for large-scale projects like reality shows where you got like 10 editors and 4 assistants on one project. So I'm not going to show you that full workflow here, but it's something to look up on your own, or it's something that you will learn on the job when you use Avid in a professional environment. Okay, so now that we've got our footage in, so now how do we actually start the edit? So first things first, so let's create a new sequence. So how do we do that? We go right click, new sequence, there we go. Or shortcut key, Command Shift N, or Control Shift N. So we're going to just call this demo sequence. So there we go. So let's open this in our timeline. So now you can see that we have one video track and 2 audio tracks. So if you want to add more audio tracks or video tracks, you right click new video track, or as a shortcut key you can use Command Y for video or Command U for audio. Now you see that there's this message: you have added the maximum number of audio tracks, because in this version of Avid Free DV you are given a maximum of 2 video tracks and 2 audio tracks. So let's ignore that for now. So now some of the standard things you come to expect from editing software. So let's say I want to find some areas of footage. I want to marking it in and out, right? So let's say I want to go it from this shot onwards. So boom, in with an I, or you can click mark in, and then you want to say I want to go all the way from here.
World of, you know. But now you can keep the good things in that shot and just try it out.
That's the out. By the way, just so you know, the way I'm doing this fast forwarding on the keyboard, I'm using the J and L key. J is to go backwards fast. You tap it a few times, and then L is to go fast. Go fast. So there we go. So now that I mark my in and out, so how do you get it into the sequence? Click, drag, and it's in. And you notice something, that is only the video is selected. That's because I did not select the audio tracks. So let's do that again. So select, make sure everything is selected. Okay, so before that, what you see down here is that this is your video track on the timeline, whereas this represents your source, what's in your source browser. So you got to make sure that it's corresponding correctly. And you can also assign this, okay, we'll talk about that later, but you can also drag it down. Let's do it again, drag it down, boom, and there you go. You have a sequence on the timeline. So the next thing I want to do is, let's say I want to add another clip from the other bin. Let's say here, right?
On episode 1. Anyway, we
mark in, and then
the hyperdrive is leaking.
And that's how out. So I want to put this at the very end and add it onto my sequence. So to zoom in and out of your timeline is the open bracket and the close bracket. So yeah, the square bracket button. Yeah. So sorry if this is a bit rushed, but yeah. So because I'm used to doing shortcut keys, but these are the standard shortcut keys that you will use when you are using Avid. So, and yes, I said earlier, if in a professional editing workflow, is you really need to know the shortcut keys. Alright, so that's how I showed you a way of editing clips, which is to drag it into a timeline. But let's say you want to do something very specific. You want to insert the there's two ways you can do this. If you see these two buttons here, so there's a way. One way is a splice in. Alright, so it's not a best way to example it. So splice in, what it does is that it actually inserts the clip in between where your playhead is. So to give you an example of that, so if I were to splice in, say here, this clip into here, so this is what happens. You see that? It splices, as the name implies, it splices in the clip in between. So what happens if you try the other option, which is to override? So override will, as you can probably tell, it will cover right across. It does not change the duration by overrides, and all this is very dependent on where your track is. So I can assign to, say in Avid, I can do this. I can assign, I want the video 1 to go into video 2, and I don't want to do the audio at all. So I can do is I either can splice in. Sorry, okay, I'll explain this feature. So I can override it, or I can splice in. But splice in, you notice, doesn't work because I don't have my track selected, or they are not linked. So what I'm doing here is I'm linking all these tracks, so that when I do all this splice in, it will affect these tracks. So let's do that again. Splice in, boom. See, it inserts right here, and it also cuts a space in between. So override, there we go. So that's the basic splice in and override. So the next thing I want to also show is how to make a cut point. So we call it make edit. So let's say I want to make a cut down here. So I can't, if you were to use Final Cut or Media or Final Cut or Premiere, you would use the razor tool, am I right? So in this case, we don't have such a thing. In Avid, it doesn't work that way. So what you have to do is you have to select all the tracks that you want to make the edit, and you click this button here, Add Edit, and there you go. There's a cut point right here. So how do I move the clips around? So there's two ways you can move the clips around. Let's start with segment mode. So I select the segment mode and I select the clip, because if you don't select this, you can't select the clips. So you select this, boom, 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 and you can move it however you want. So there's another so you might be wondering, what is the splice in mode, the override mode, or what do you call that, the extract splice in mode. So what this allows me to do is, it's very interesting. You can I don't think a lot of other editing software have this, except maybe Final Cut Pro X. So let's say if I want to swap the shots between here and here. So if I were to do the traditional way, what I would do is I would take this and like move it here, and then select everything and then move right here, right? So there's actually, in Avid, there's actually a shorter way to do it. So what you can do is you can select this mode, the yellow one, the yellow arrow, and I want to swap the shots, boom, boom, and there you go. Oops. Redo that. So you can see that the order has been completely swapped. And there you go. These are the basics mode of editing in Avid Free DV, or in fact, Media Composer works in a very similar way, the full version. So one very important thing to note in Avid is that it's very important to mark your in points. So in Premiere, if you don't mark your in point, usually the in point, if let's say I were to clear the in point, clear in, okay. If I were to clear the in point, and I say I just want everything from here to here, right? So I just want to put it at, let's say, at the end of the clip. So I do the same thing. I put in, sorry. So you thought, hey, the in point will be at the start of the clip, right? No, you will notice that your in point is actually where I place my playhead earlier on in the sequence. So it's actually the wrong way. So if you don't mark your in point in Avid, you properly before you put your clips in, you are going to end up in a situation where you might not be putting the parts that you want in your timeline. So you should take note of that. I might be going a bit fast because I'm so used to the shortcut keys here. But anyway, I'll just try to get you basically acquainted with the basics. So remember, always mark your in point. If you want to be in point at the start, you mark in. So in point and out basically is the same as before, same as Premiere I and O. Alright, next mode. Let's show you about the trim tools that we have in Premiere, in Media Compose, in this Avid Free DV. Oh, okay. Alright, so when you want to trim something, you have to toggle a mode called the trim mode. So you toggle this, and basically you can, and this is how you essentially trim. Okay, let's say we have that clip earlier on from the cuts and reshoots.
Episode 1. Anyway, we played this.
So we move in. This is the in point. We have to put it at the end of the clip. And then the shortcut key to do override is B. Sorry, do it again. B. And the shortcut to do splice in is V. V makes sense because it's the shape splice in, so you can understand why is it called splice in. Anyway, so let's talk about the trim modes on Avid. You toggle the trim mode from with this button. So what this will allow you to do. So right now you will notice that roller has two sides of the edge selected. So what this will do is to roll the edit without changing the duration. And so in trim mode, you can also select just one side of the. Sorry, you can also just select one side of the clip. So I can select this. So I can just trim the following clip right after it. So say I want to start the clip, say from here, the shot on the boom, and you will notice that it closes the gap right away. So this is what we call ripple trim in Avid. So these are the two very basic modes on the trim function of Avid Media Composer. So it also should be noted that I think this trim mode is heavily simplified from the full version of Avid, because there's there's actually no separate ripple trim and override trim options available. It's an advanced feature, maybe you can explore it on your own, but for those old school Avid editors who are watching this, perhaps you can enlighten me in the comments if ripple trim and override trims works in the same way in the older versions of Avid. So I actually missed out something. I want to just talk earlier about something called how do you delete clips. How do you delete clips from Avid? So I'm gonna just go back to this point here and snap. I say I want to do away with this. I don't want this ripple trim anymore. So I'm just gonna select this, get rid of this trim. Boom, there we go. Okay, so let's play this clip. By the way, this clip is actually, for your information, this clip is actually from this documentary of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And if you look closely right here, you will notice that this is actually how Avid looks like in the 90s, which is kind of interesting. So if you try to use the Avid interface today and you look at this, you will notice that actually it doesn't look too different from what you see today. So if there are veteran Avid editors out there watching this, I would like to know what version of Avid is this that Lucasfilm is using right here. So yeah, this documentary itself is actually quite interesting. that shows how George Lucas really approached the whole filmmaking process. And this particular segment is actually really showing how he approached the editing process as well. Okay, so now let's say I want to delete some parts of it. Oops, okay. Alright, so I accidentally disabled the audio. So this is the way you solo the track. So
shot, and then if this other shot works, we'll come
Back to the shot. Take Panaka's looking at.
See, Panaka's starting to move in this shot. So we split him out and start him here. We'll split it right in front of the pilot. There, just go forward.
okay, so there's a long pause right down here, which I want to get rid of.
Just the I want to.
Alright, so just to tell where it is, I'm gonna just show the waveform fast menu. So to show waveform is for some reason it's called sample plot. Yeah, although in the newer version of Avid it will just show audio info waveform. Yeah, so I'm just gonna look at it. So I'm gonna see where I want to trim it. So right here.
I want to get.
So I'll just mark in out point.
Shot. So we
Split him out and start him here. We'll split him right in front of the pilot. There, just go forward.
Okay, there we go. So what we do is there's two ways to cut this out. So there's lift. So let's click the lift button and see what happens. Basically, lift means it will delete the segment that you selected and the tracks that you selected. But it does not actually close this gap. So how do you actually close the gap? So you use something called extract. Boom. There you go. So that's how it looks like.
split him out and start him here. There, just go forward. I want to get just the tail end of it.
Okay, so you will notice that that this shot, I want to extend this shot a little bit longer. So again, I'll use back the trim tools, back to trim mode, and I'm gonna not select this. So I'm gonna roll it longer, so maybe around here. So let's take a look at how this
Pilot. There, just go forward. I want to get just the tail end of it. Obi-Wan sitting
There
down.
you go. And I think that looks pretty alright. And there you go. So this is the basic ways of doing the trim, some basic edits in Avid Free DV. So the next segment we're going to talk a little bit about putting effects on and how to adjust some basic audio. Alright, so just before I start this new segment about the effects mode and audio and exporting, I just want to remember, I want to point out that it's actually a way to zoom in without, to zoom into your timeline without using keyboard shortcut, which is this scale bar right here. Yeah, in and out. So yes, yeah. So but usually a lot of professionals like to use this the square brackets because it's a lot faster. All right, so so now that you have your sequence in here, so let's show you some of the basic effects that you can use, which is not very much, to be honest. So first of all, let's talk about how we're gonna do transitions. So what you're gonna do, let's say between, say, alright, maybe let's say between this shot and this shot we have a transition. So what we can do is we move the right here, and then we're gonna find this. Where's the transition button? Alright, this is the another fast menu, and you see this right here, transition. Boom. So you have several options: a dissolve or a dip to color, the quick one, and you just add to that. There you go.
In that shot and just throw away the bad.
Anyway, we played the scene the first time.
So the shortcut key for this is actually just backslash. Boom. Yeah, there you go. So so there's several ways you can also use dip to resolve, dip to color. So to modify the transition, you basically hover over the transition and then you click back the click transition issue. So I want to modify it to dip to color. Okay, sorry, it's not here. So this is where we're going to go into the effects mode. So there's this transition here. So let's modify this. So I want the background dip to say, choose basic colors. So I don't want a dip to, where's my mouse? Oops. Alright, so I don't want, let's say I don't want to do a dip to black. So mouse keeps disappearing. I want to dip to white. So something like that. Okay. So now let's see what happens.
Just throw away the bad.
Anyway, we'd played the scene the first time.
There you go. So and so now the next step, this is how we do some basic transition. So if I want to take away this transition, what I can do is I can go exit effects mode and remove effect, and there you go, effect is gone. So let's talk about what other effects we can use, some basic effects you can use. So a lot of editors will say, oh, I want to punch into this shot, but oh, I click on if you were to use Premiere or Final Cut, normally I would just click on the image and resize, right? But you can't do that. So in Avid, in order to do any form of resizing, you need to put an effect into it. So I'm going to go to this effects here, I'm going to drag this resize. So what this will allow me to do when I go back to my effects mode, and then I can adjust the size. Okay, first of all, I need to zoom this my window slower. So I'm going to Control K and L. So this is how I adjust the size of my the video monitor. So I can just, I want to punch in, I want to get rid of those black bars. So let's say I want to get rid of those black bars. So there we go. Okay, oops. There it is. So we can also do cropping. Can do crop to the right. So out of interest, to show you that how these functions are kind of very similar to the old Avid, let's actually go to a clip from this making of Star Wars Episode 1. I'm going to just go to this clip of. So in this clip, actually, what Ben Bird is trying to do,
I want to get just.
he's trying to split the screen up into so that the actors are resyncing their performances. So how is he doing it? Actually, you look at this, actually using a effect. So it's actually very similar to the effect that we actually gonna use right here. So there you go, boom. Back to effects mode. So yeah, see the crop and all that is all very similar. So this is the effects mode. So in this free version, you don't really have a lot of effects that you can play with. So the next thing you're gonna do is to, let's say I want to create titles. Titles in Avid, and especially in this rather old version of Avid, they don't really it's a bit old school and it's a bit clunky in some spot. So let's say I want to create a title. So there's this T is called a title 2. So this is where I can create a title. So I just say Ben Bird editing Star Wars. So I can adjust the text. I can, put shadows on it. If I want to. Border or something like that. Yeah, shadow. There you go. So I can save this title, but close it, asks me to save it, and I want to save it into this bin and into my E drive, and same resolution, save it. So there you go, I have my title. So I can now, I'm gonna drag this title, I want to put this title on a certain area. So I'm gonna put, say, be right around here, mark my in, and out. So I'm I want to just put the top layer, and then I override. So this is what happens. So I want to extend this title so that it goes all the way into this next shot. So I'm gonna go to my trim mode. Dun, dun, dun. There you go. So in Avid, you can actually toggle which video track you want to watch. Sometimes by default it might go to the bottom and you might wonder like, hey, why is my title not showing? So you just make sure you're viewing the one on the top. So I want to also add a transition to this, let's say the top or the start of this title. So I can go to trim mode, and I can also do add transition. So it will float.
I think it's gonna be better. I agree. Well, let me see that Padaka scene. The one.
Okay, I do not want to use a dip to black, so I'm gonna modify this into dissolve.
I agree. Well, let me see that Padaka scene. The one where.
Alright, you do need to render this effect.
Scene. The one where everybody's sitting down.
In order to play in real time, I'm not gonna do that here. In Avid, you pretty much especially in the old version, you pretty much need to render everything. Otherwise, it will just show this.
Well, let me see that Padaka scene.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say I want to adjust some audio, right? Okay, so in Avid, you can also show some aspects of your clips, like the clip gain. I turn this on manually. If I turn it off, this is how it will look like. So your clip gain. But I don't know in this old version of Avid how to actually adjust the keyframe here by itself. Maybe some of the older editors, the veteran editor can enlighten me. But what I do know is the audio mixer is still here. So it's Tools, Audio Mix. So this is the tool that is going to be used to adjust your audio levels. So let's say I want to adjust the audio mix for this clip. So I just make sure that these two are selected, and then I want them to move them at the same time, and I lower it. So you will notice it already that the volume level is lower.
The one where everybody's sitting down.
So I'm gonna undo that. And what else? Is there an option? Okay, so there are actually some of these more advanced options that seems to be disabled on this version of on the free version. To my understanding, to people I talk in the industry, these options still do work in the older versions of Avid. There's an option here that you can adjust. You can mark in and out on all this, and say I want to adjust all of them to minus whatever, to minus what level and all that. Yeah. Alright, so now that I have my sequence, okay, before I want to just do a minor tweak here. Let's say I want to remove an audio. So let's listen.
Just throw away the bad.
Anyway, we played the scene the first.
I want to remove the word anyway. So to turn on, so in order to do that, I need to hear the audio. So on Avid, on this free DV, you need to turn on something called audio scrubbing. So unfortunately, this will work in older versions of Avid, but in the newer versions of Avid, like Avid 2020, you cannot turn on audio scrubbing by using something called the caps lock. So I turn on and off audio scrubbing by using caps lock. So watch what happens. I turn on caps lock. I can actually hear the audio. So let's say I want to take out the words anyway. So okay, so that's that. Select the audio. I lift it. So in case I haven't explained already, the shortcut to lift is Z, and the shortcut to extract is X. So we do not want to extract, but so in this case I'm going to just press Z or Z or whatever it is. So
keep the good things in that shot and just throw away the bad.
We played the scene the first time round.
there you go. And now the audio I want to add, let's hear this.
The hyperdrive is leaking.
I want to add cross dissolve right at the very end. So again, I'm going to just select these two, the audio tracks, add a dissolve, and I'm going to put it at the start. So add. So let's hear how it looks like.
Power to get us to Coruscant. The hyperdrive is leaking.
Alright, so let's say I want to adjust the audio, the length of this audio, this transition. So I believe under the effects mode you can actually do that. So oh sorry, actually there's no effects transition manipulator. So in the advanced version of or the full version of Avid, the modern version, at least for the modern version of Avid that I know, you can actually adjust the duration of the transition, but just by clicking on this part. But in this case, I think I'm gonna have to do it from here. Yeah.
The hyperdrive is leaking.
Alright, so that's that. Alright, so let's say I'm gonna export. I'm satisfied with how this looks. I want to export it. So before you important thing in Avid, before you export, you make sure you have to select all your video and audio layers. And just to be safe, I mark in and out everything. So file, export. So demo sequence, let's say I do this here, and then export settings. We just need to see our options here. So I can export it as a QuickTime movie. You can only in Avid Free DV you can only export. There's only a limited amount of options you can export. So you can actually does support H.264, but I'm not gonna try that. I'm just gonna use AVI codec. I'm just gonna fast export to QuickTime NTSC. So it's usually the fastest way to do the export. Alright, so native dimension. As you can probably see down, in this free version, the 16:9 square pixel is kind of grayed out, so I can't export 16:9. So I'm curious if if there are people out there watching, if there are veteran editors out there also watching this, that in Avid during this time, does it actually, the full version actually does support 16:9? Let me know in the comments below. Alright, so I'm done. So that's my settings, and now we'll just export it, save it. This will take a while. And that should really be the end of, this little revisit of Avid Free DV. I'll just as I let this thing export, and I'll just talk over it and just hope that it has been a very interesting trip down memory lane to see how professional video editing was done on an Avid back in those days. They call it an Avid. They in those days they like to refer to Avid like a machine. Because Avid in those days, actually, just to share some information, is that it's actually a very turnkey system. They actually sell you a whole computer and a monitor and everything, and sell you it for something like tens of thousands of dollars. It's really expensive, just a single Avid. But today it's just a simple software that you can use. It's actually so there's actually a lot more features in the full version of Avid that I haven't touched on yet, and I think it's worth exploring for yourself when you get the chance. So yes, it is true that after you look at everything that is in Avid here, that some of the aspects of the interface may seem a little bit dated compared to what you see today with Premiere or Resolve or even Final Cut Pro. And it will be a bit intimidating for newcomers or even seasoned Premiere or Final Cut editors. But I believe this is that once you actually take your time to understand the whole workflow and all the tools, I believe you will come to like it, especially when it comes to just the cutting tools. Of course, I believe Avid really, in my opinion, has the best cutting tools in any NLE to date. At least for my favorite. The Premiere is still kind of clunky in some ways. I used to think that Premiere is the best, but once I use Avid, I couldn't go back because I realized I cut faster on Avid. And this is a reason why There's a reason why many well-known feature film editors today still use Avid for their offline editing. Just if you don't know what offline video editing is, it's basically editing just the pictures without doing any effects or color or any finishing touches or visual effects. So as I said earlier in the video, if you want to try the Avid interface for yourself, you can actually go to the Avid website and download Media Composer first, though you will have to register for an account first. By the way, just to be disclaimer, I'm not being sponsored by Avid to do this. I'm just saying, okay, you want to try it, just go to the website and actually, or you go and Google it and just download Media Composer first for yourself. And by any chance, if you are by any chance you will happen to have an old Windows XP PC lying around and you really want to try and download Avid Free DV, I'm sure you can. Although it's no longer available on the Avid website, you can probably find it on some archive sites. And with that, thank you guys for tuning in. Bye for now.